Hi, this is Stu Turgel, your host for The Phoenix File, a weekly news magazine and community conversation with the people and programs making a positive impact on the quality of life in our community. Coming up next on today's edition of The Phoenix File, I'll be looking at what it means to plan for responsible development in downtown Phoenix. I'll be talking with Sherry Rampy, a member of the City of Phoenix Historic Preservation Commission, president of the Roosevelt Action Association, and a local realtor. She'll be joined by Tim Sprague, a principal with Habitat Metro, whose development company believes in building social capital with adjacent communities. No matter what your views are about downtown development, you won't want to miss this important conversation on today's edition of The Phoenix File, coming up next right here on Radio Phoenix, where the Valley comes to talk, sing, connect. Good evening, and welcome to the Phoenix File. We're a news magazine and community conversation with the people and programs making a positive impact on the greater Phoenix community. For those who live and work and visit downtown Phoenix, there's one topic that is sure to generate strong feelings on both sides of an issue, and that issue is downtown development. Now, there are those who would like to keep the look and feel of the areas just the way they've been for many years, especially as it relates to particular neighborhoods. And then there are those who believe in expansion, modernization, and development and redevelopment. Because development is inevitable in a growing urban center like Phoenix, the question may not be whether or not to develop at all, but rather how to approach development in the most responsible way possible. Joining me tonight on the Phoenix File to talk about responsible downtown development are my guests, Sherry Rampy and Tim Sprague, two individuals with a deep concern about the way in which downtown Phoenix and its adjacent neighborhoods can look to the future with respect for the past and a vision for the future. Sherry Rampy has been a realtor for more than 20 years, specializing in vintage and historic properties in central and downtown Phoenix. She sits on the City of Phoenix Historic Preservation Commission, and she is the president of the Roosevelt Action Association. Tim Sprague has been an attorney by training and an owner and founding partner of Habitat Metro LLC, a Phoenix-based firm developing residential, mixed-use, and hospitality projects in the Phoenix area. Some of Tim's projects include Portland Place condominiums and Portland on the Park condominiums, which are mid-rise redevelopment projects in the Roosevelt Historic District. Another project is Oasis on Grand, an adaptive reuse conversion of a 100-unit SRO motel into a 60-unit rental community focused on artists. We don't have time to list all of Habitat Metro's projects, but I think those will give you a sense of the thrust of Tim's development work. So, Sherry and Tim, I want to say thank you for being here tonight, and welcome to the Phoenix File.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you. You know, as I thought about our topic tonight, I wondered how to frame our conversation in a way that our listeners would understand what is meant by responsible development. And then I read some of the information about your firm, Tim, and I was struck by one phrase that may help us get the conversation going. Your firm says that it measures its success from a double bottom line perspective: successful financial results and the creation of social capital within the adjacent neighborhood and community. It's that second goal that I think would be a good place for us to start tonight. So tell us what you mean by creating social capital within the adjacent neighborhood and community, and how that relates to the subject of responsible development.
Well, Stu, thank you again for allowing us to be here with you tonight. It's interesting when you start talking about social capital and how you provide that to a neighborhood. I go back to your introduction for Sherry and myself, people that are concerned about our neighborhoods. In my mind, I see us as being enthusiastic about our neighborhoods, and I think that enthusiasm is what guides what we do in our business. Social capital to us means, how do we add to? How do we make an area that we're working in better than it was before we got there? And the key for us in our work is to listen. Anytime you do redevelopment work, you're going into somebody's neighborhood. It's where people live. You're going to change it. The best way to know how to do that is to listen, because the people that live there are the ones that know all of the nuances that really make something good or bad. And so for us, it's to come in and understand what those nuances are, listen to what the neighborhood seeks, find out ways that they think it could be better, and then try to address that as we're developing. Like, it's interesting, some of the best ideas that we've had about projects we've done in downtown Phoenix have come from conversations in somebody's living room having coffee and donuts as we're talking about what our project is like. What we try to do is to learn those things as much as possible, and when we can, celebrate them and incorporate them in what we do.
Sherry, do you want to comment on what Tim had to say from the perspective of the head of a neighborhood association?
Well, I would say Tim does this amazingly well. He's one of our favorite, I would say definitely one of our favorite developers. And we have several really great developers that have come into our neighborhood association area boundaries. And the best ones are those that become part of our community, very strong parts of our community.
So it seems as though it's theoretically possible for developers and neighborhoods to agree on development goals. And yet, undoubtedly, there are many examples of tension that sometimes occurs when a new project is first floated. How do you manage the inevitable minefield when going from the earliest concept to a coming together of what might have started out as disparate points of view?
I will tell you that from our perspective, it's not, don't go into a neighborhood with a project that is fully baked. I think it's important to be able to come into a neighborhood with a concept of what you want to do, and to be flexible and listen as you go through that process. I mean, too many times I've seen where people come in and, this is it, take it or leave it type of proposition, and that goes nowhere.
We have people that have been working in the revitalization of the neighborhood for decades. They've worked with the city and developers, and at one point we had development forums to bring developers in to give them an idea and say, we would like you to develop our neighborhood. I think Tim's right. We would like to talk to people because we do know what may or may not work within the neighborhood.
I would imagine that the process of development is sometimes like a multi-headed hydra, with participants from the developer, the neighborhood, the city, and what may sometimes feel like a virtual army of attorneys. How do you create order from the chaos so that the consensus that you want can be reached? And what happens when you get stuck and opposing sides dig in their heels?
When we developed Portland Place, which is our first project in the Roosevelt area, we responded to a request for proposals from the city, and we were successful in being picked to do that. We thought that after that point that we would probably be starting development within 6 to 7 months after that time. Well, a year and a half later, we did start development. And the reason for that was because the city said, well, okay, you're acquiring city property. We want to make sure that every one of the stakeholders has the opportunity to voice their interests. Well, at first blush, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to take forever. Well, it did take a long time. But what happened is, Sherry said, it's meetings, meetings, meetings. And unless you do that, unless you open up the door and have those conversations, the point of where somebody draws a line in the sand, or as you said, digs your heels into the sand, that happens quickly if you don't have those meetings. People get up in arms very, very quickly. And the most important thing is to realize you're changing where somebody lives.
It's a big change. Sherry, from the neighborhood perspective, how do residents and property owners and merchants view the idea of development, the concept of development within or adjacent to their area? Do they start out from a position that they want to defend the status quo, or that development by definition is inherently a bad thing? Or do they approach the idea of change to their community as something that is inevitable, but wanting to be instrumental in what those changes will mean?
Like any community, you're going to have diverse views. And we have people within the community that they address the change from a fear base. Then you have other people that are enthusiastic and can't wait to see that the possibility of 600 housing units is exciting to someone and is terrifying to another. So I think what you have to do is, it is in those meetings, you have to address what why don't you like this idea? What are the fears? And then address them. And the best developers that we have had are the ones that are really authentic and have the integrity to sometimes tell us things that we may not like to hear, but sometimes as to why, because it's not just the developer and the community. You end up with the city, you end up with zoning requirements, lending requirements, and so some things, there are things that maybe the community and the developer would both like to do, but zoning doesn't allow it, or the realities of business don't allow it.
Tim, let's try to flip the question and talk about the way developers, and I realize that's not a monolithic group by any stretch, how developers approach the process with sensitivity to those groups that Sherry was speaking about.
Okay. I think, like anything else, in order to understand where you're going, you need to understand from which you come. And that means to come into a neighborhood and try to get a sense of what's happened over time and over history. Look and see how circulation has evolved over time. And that means going way back to the very beginning. Look and see how streets were laid out. Look and see how housing was laid out within the neighborhood. And then start taking those steps. And as you start taking those steps and understanding the history, you then start to understand where people are today. And once you're able to communicate that to folks, I think that helps open up the door for a good, healthy dialogue. For those people that come in, I mean, one of the things it's probably blasphemy to a lot of developers to hear me say this, but for those folks that come in with a design that was designed for some suburban neighborhood and take that product and do what in our industry you call it a site adapt, meaning you take it and you try to make it adapt to this other site. Those kind of things, truly, they haven't thought about how this thing evolved. They haven't thought about how it fits into the neighborhood in terms of how it evolves to go forward. They're trying to shove a square peg into a round hole. And those types of approaches, while easy, while cost-effective from the developer standpoint, really kind of go against the grain of what's going on within the community. And that type of approach, I think, leads to a lot of arguments, and it leads to a lot of disruption of the tranquility of a neighborhood. The other side of the coin, I think, if you try to understand what's happened, and as Sherry used the word authentic, well, authentic just means understanding, I think, in terms of what's out there. And if you take that approach, I think it works.
Good. We're going to talk about vision, which is terribly important, what your vision is for the future when we come back from our break. And but before we do take that break, I want to remind our listeners that one way that you can support Radio Phoenix is by becoming one of our sustaining members. For as little as $35 per year, members receive discounts, savings, and other benefits provided by our membership program partners. And don't forget, the membership fee is tax deductible. For more information or to sign up, call 480-829-5746, or you can go online to radiophoenix.org and click on the Donate tab at the top of the page. And we thank you for your generous support of community radio. We're going to take a short break, get some messages from our sponsors, and I'll be back very shortly with my guests Tim Sprague and Sherry Rampy, talking about responsible downtown development. This is Stu Turgel, and you're listening to The Phoenix File. Welcome back to The Phoenix File. This is Stu Turgel, and I'm talking today with Tim Sprague and Sherry Rampy, and we're talking about responsible development in the downtown area. Tim and Sherry, before we took our break, I said that we would be talking a little bit about vision. I'd be curious to know from each of you what your vision is for downtown and central Phoenix, and how do your respective points of view relate to the way the city of Phoenix views the future of these areas?
I think most important thing that we need to think about for the future, and I know that I have a particular vision. It's more of what I think is going to be revealed as time goes on. A big impact is going to be autonomous vehicles, and I think if we don't understand that, we're missing the boat. Part parking, which has always been an issue in a town like this that has, God knows how many cars, that's going to be a different story. And how things get developed and how transportation takes place and how circulation takes place within neighborhoods is going to dramatically change the way things happen. And I think you've got to anticipate that. I think there will be projects that have a lot of parking to be able to accommodate what the needs are today, that 5-10 years from now we're going to look at it and say, my gosh, why in the world did they do that? You can see it in terms of people that own cars now in downtown Phoenix, how many people use Grid, the bicycle system, how many people use Uber to get from point A to point B, and if you got a delivery or something you have to do over the weekend, you go to Zipcar and you do that. Believe it or not, in today's world, 2016, there's more than a handful of folks that live in the Roosevelt area, in an area where we're very active, that don't own a car. So I think you start with that, and then you start looking at how you develop the city, which to me means you make it very more pedestrian. You take advantage of Hance Park, the 32-acre park in the middle of downtown, and you take advantage of all the great art and all the restaurants and all the other entertainment things from a pedestrian perspective. And if you start building around that, I think you're going to create a place that is exciting for a lot of people.
Sherry?
I agree in that we are very pedestrian. We have in our neighborhood in the north side, we have the historic street lights and their pedestrian lights. And so we are a walking neighborhood, a bicycling neighborhood. We're going to get a higher, denser population, and it will be more vibrant, and there will be more on the street level. So while there are a lot of high rises, actually most of the activity will be street level, and things like the bicycle lanes, Zip cars, and Uber. And we have many people that are young professionals that don't have cars. They've done the analysis, and it works best for them.
Is that a vision that the two of you think is shared by city leaders?
I think
it
so.
is. Yeah, I do.
We have light rail.
right. We have light rail. Here, I didn't say that. The biggest investment we've made on something like that. It's interesting what's happened. I think the city leaders think this too. We want to have downtown Phoenix be a core of neat things to happen. If you look at all the cities that have been successful and have successful downtown cores, they're dense. They have a lot of diverse things going on, and they make it to where people bump into each other and they talk. They're in the coffee shop or whatever. That's the vision that's going to make Phoenix a great place. If we have that kind of collective and that kind of interaction, this is going to be a fun place to be.
Well, I think that provides a very good segue into the next point that I wanted to get into. And as I was getting ready for our show, doing a little bit of reading about what's going on in the downtown Phoenix area, I discovered that there are about 3,600 new apartments under construction or planned for in the downtown Phoenix area in what was once a relatively affordable area for apartment rentals. And according to the Phoenix Business Journal, newer units in Phoenix's central business district have average rents of $1,643 per month, which is up 25% since 2013. And rents for newer downtown apartments are $700 per month more than the region and city as a whole, and $300 more per month than downtown Tempe and Scottsdale. So I'm not here to argue whether this is a good or a bad thing, but it does likely have implications for the community. And if this meets the general definition of gentrification, what are the implications for the community? And maybe that's what you were getting at before when you were talking about the Medici effect. Sherry?
Well, but something that I feel is a bit of a misconception is that, oh my gosh, all these, high priced things are coming in and we're going to lose. We still have within our neighborhood association alone, we have probably the best affordable housing in the state, I would think.
I agree.
We have affordable housing for seniors. We have affordable housing. We have 9 affordable housing complexes just within our neighborhood association boundaries. So some of these other apartments and rentals are coming in are actually bringing in a more affluent group. We have within our neighborhood just our housing stock. We have houses that range from 1,200 square feet up to 4,000 square feet. And Tim's development, which this is one thing that I keep harping on to other developers, one of the things I love about it is that on Portland on the Park. They span from $300,000 up to over $1.3 million. So there's $1 million span. That's about diversity, and a healthy community is diverse. Like our neighborhood association, our board, we have a span of 50 years on our board members. We have board members in their 20s and board members in their 70s. And that's what makes a healthy community.
So in terms of gentrification, are we having people moving this part of the world that make more money that used to live here before? No question about it. But at the same time, as Sherry said, there's a good housing stock, both ownership and for rental product, that is reasonably priced. We were involved in a project during the recession that's called Oasis on Grand. And that was affordable housing for artists. And it was a time when there was no money to do anything in the normal market rate type stuff. And one of the things that we feel that's so important to have the texture and the vitality of a neighborhood is to have art and all the things that are around art, the many different facets of art. That's our amenity package for downtown. I mean, those are the things that we really want to see live and grow. So from our perspective, during that time period, we devoted our time to develop a place for artists to live, so where they could show their wares, live, eat, drink, commune with each other, and have that grow. We've been able to do that in downtown. Now, it takes a conscious decision to really focus upon that and do that all of the time, because otherwise it gets very vanilla. And very vanilla is not what we want.
Is there a downside? Does this wonderful new addition to the community, or additions to the community, in any way negatively impact people who have been in the community? Does it displace people?
It makes change.
It makes change.
There's no question about that. It does make change. But I think you have to be cognizant of that in the beginning and make sure you try to protect those things that are important as much as you can.
And I think that it does make change, but it also changes areas within downtown that have been lagging so that they improve as well. So I don't think there's a net loss at all.
I agree.
Good. Tim, I wanted to ask you about the net zero apartments. Is that a project of yours?
It is.
And so tell us briefly what it's about, and if you think this is going to be the way projects are designed in the future.
Well, first of all, we hope it's the way projects are designed in the future. We're at the very early stages, and we have a project that is designed at 3rd Avenue and Roosevelt that our goal is to have net zero for all of the residential units. We have approximately 115 units planned there. And we have a very significant solar array that's planned for the top of it that we believe we can provide the solar power for those units. We've got about 8,000 square feet of retail space that will supply a good chunk of what their energy needs are. We have a containment, a catchment water system that we hope to have everything that comes out of their drain pipe except for what comes out of your toilet. It's all going to go into a catchment system to reprocess to be able to use for landscaping at the building. But most importantly, our parking ratio for that building is 0.6 parking spaces per dwelling unit. So that means some folks aren't going to have a parking spot. So how do you deal with that? Well, what we learned is that you can buy an electric car for about the same price that you build a parking spot. So we're going to have our own car share program. We're going to buy 6 to 10 cars for people that are in this apartment complex to be able to use. And when we introduced it to the neighborhood, it was an amazing number of folks says, well, let's spread it out. Can we use it if we want to, be in it? So we're really seriously looking at that. We think it's something we can do. So the question you ask, is that what will be in the future? Where our goal is to have open architecture in terms of how we design it. When we finish, we're going to open up the kimono and tell everybody exactly the way that we did it. So hopefully that's the new standard that people start from.
It's exciting.
It's very exciting. We had a neighborhood association meeting. We had over 55 people there, and not a single person was not in support of it. Everybody was supportive of this. We're thrilled to have what everybody's been talking about is we live in Phoenix. We should have solar. We should conserve water. To have this within our neighborhood is, as the first, is exactly what I think the neighborhood wants.
But let me tell you, that's not easy.
Yeah,
once you start blazing trails like that, you run into a lot of bumps.
Sherry, before we reach the end of tonight's show, I want to ask you to briefly say something about the Roosevelt Action Association's reversal on its earlier position about the redevelopment of the Circle Records building into what I guess is going to be a 19-story apartment building at Central and McKinney Street. What went into your decision to change your point of view on that?
Well, we had always wanted to actually preserve as much of the building as we possibly could, or actually have the developer do it. So that's why we spent over a dozen meetings just trying to work with that. We had come to an impasse, so we stepped back, and then they came back to us with something that I think is going to be good. Actually, we had a member vote, ballot vote, and by a majority of over 3-1, the neighbors supported what they came back to us with as what we think will be beneficial. And again, when you look at where the city, what will be seen in 5 years, we will not have lost a building, and we will have a high-quality project with public art and historic preservation funding where we can do a lot of good.
That sounds like the penultimate definition of responsible thinking and responsible planning, so I commend you on that. The topic of responsible downtown development in Phoenix in general is a question with no really simple solutions. We could have talked all night about this, but unfortunately our time is up. Sherry and Tim, I want to thank both of you for being on the show tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
My guests tonight have been Sherry Rampy and Tim Sprague, who have done a terrific job helping us to better understand what is meant by responsible development. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday night when my guest will be Rabbi Shmuley Yanklowitz, one of the nation's most well-known, visible, and active social justice advocates. We'll be talking about what motivates him to speak for the voiceless. Until next week, thanks for listening to the Phoenix File. For Radio Phoenix, this is Stu Turgel.